On July 22, 1991, police entered a nondescript apartment building in Milwaukee. They were led by Tracy Edwards to Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. Inside, they found horrors beyond imagination. Dahmer's arrest shocked the world. The details were too gruesome to comprehend. The city of Milwaukee was forever scarred. The arrest marked the end of a reign of terror. Though the full scope of Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes would not be known until his 1991 arrest, the seeds of his depravity were sown much earlier. His first murder occurred in 1978, just weeks after his high school graduation. The victim was Stephen Hicks, an 18-year-old hitchhiker who Dahmer lured to his childhood home. Dahmer's modus operandi, luring young men to secluded locations, rendering them unconscious, and then engaging in acts of necrophilia, was already evident in this first murder. He would later dismember Hicks's body, scattering the remains in the woods behind his house. This early crime foreshadowed the brutality that would come to define his later killings. Following this initial murder, Dahmer enlisted in the army. However, his burgeoning alcoholism led to his discharge in 1981. He returned to Ohio where he lived with his grandmother. It was during this period that Dahmer began to frequent gay bars and bathhouses, places where he could prey on vulnerable young men. In 1987, Dahmer committed his second murder, killing Stephen Tuomi in a Milwaukee hotel room. This marked the beginning of an escalating pattern of violence and depravity. Over the next 4 years, Dahmer would go on to kill 15 more victims, their ages ranging from 14 to 33. As Dahmer's reign of terror continued, his crimes became increasingly brazen and grotesque. He experimented with different methods of killing, often drugging his victims before strangling them. His compulsions grew, driving him to preserve body parts as trophies, a chilling testament to his descent into utter madness. The year 1991 marked a turning point, a period of heightened activity and escalating brutality. Dahmer's apartment at the Oxford Apartments, located on Milwaukee's west side, became his killing ground. The stench of death permeated the building, a gruesome byproduct of his macabre activities. Neighbors complained about the foul odors, strange noises, and the sight of Dahmer carrying large, suspicious-looking boxes at odd hours. Yet, despite these warning signs, Dahmer managed to avoid detection. His ability to blend in, to appear normal while harboring such monstrous secrets, remains one of the most chilling aspects of his case. With each successive murder, Dahmer sank deeper into a vortex of depravity. His crimes, once driven by a desire to possess his victims, took on a more sinister aspect. He began to experiment with crude forms of lobotomy, drilling holes into the skulls of his victims while they were still alive in a twisted attempt to create compliant sex slaves. The full extent of Dahmer's depravity was revealed only after his arrest, when investigators entered his apartment and uncovered a scene of unimaginable horror. The stench of death was overpowering, a testament to the carnage that had taken place within those walls. Photographs scattered throughout the apartment depicted his victims in various stages of dismemberment, a gruesome photo album of his crimes. Dahmer's methods were as calculated as they were horrifying. He often lured his victims, many of them young, gay men of color, back to his apartment with promises of money or sex. Once inside, he would drug their drinks, rendering them unconscious. Death, for Dahmer's victims, was often slow and agonizing. He would often strangle them or experiment with other methods, such as injecting cleaning fluids into their bodies. After death, he would engage in acts of necrophilia and dismemberment, storing body parts in his refrigerator or preserving them in jars of formaldehyde. Cannibalism, a horrifying aspect of Dahmer's crimes, was driven by his twisted desires for control and possession. He admitted to consuming the flesh of some of his victims, believing it would somehow make them a permanent part of him. Section 5. The Stench of Death, Police Failures and Near Misses. The case of Jeffrey Dahmer is as much a story of missed opportunities as it is a chronicle of horrific crimes. Numerous red flags, missed chances, and systemic failures allowed Dahmer to continue his killing spree for over a decade. The stench of death, both literally and figuratively, hung heavy over this case, exposing a series of failures that allowed a monster to roam free. One of the most egregious examples occurred in May 1991, when 14-year-old Konorak Sinthasomphony, one of Dahmer's victims, managed to escape from his apartment. Dazed and naked, Sinthasomphony was found wandering the streets by 3 young women who called the police. Section 6, 25th and Kilburn. The nightmare unfolds. The intersection of 25th and Kilburn in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, will forever be etched in the city's memory as the place where Jeffrey Dahmer's house of horrors was finally unveiled. It was here, at the Oxford Apartments, that the nightmare that had haunted the city for years finally came to an end. The apartment, a nondescript unit in a sprawling complex, held a sinister secret behind its closed doors. It was a place where evil reigned, where lives were taken, and where human dignity was extinguished. The discovery of Dahmer's crimes sent shockwaves through the community, leaving an indelible scar on the city's psyche. The details that emerged from that apartment were nothing short of horrific. Body parts were strewn about, stored in a refrigerator like macabre groceries. Photographs of dismembered victims, trophies of Dahmer's gruesome handiwork, were scattered throughout the apartment. The stench of death was overpowering, a testament to the horrors that had unfolded within those walls. The apartment at 25th and Kilburn became a grim symbol of Dahmer's reign of terror, a place where the line between fantasy and reality blurred, and where the darkest recesses of the human soul were laid bare. It served as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of innocence, the fragility of life, and the monstrous capacity for evil that can lurk beneath the surface of the ordinary. Section 7. Justice at Last, Dahmer's Trial and Confession. The trial of Jeffrey Dahmer began in January 1992, captivating the nation and the world. The courtroom became a stage for a chilling spectacle, as the details of Dahmer's crimes were laid bare for all to see. Prosecutors painted a gruesome picture of a calculated and remorseless killer, while defense attorneys argued that Dahmer was driven by an uncontrollable compulsion. Dahmer himself remained largely emotionless throughout the trial, his demeanor cold and detached. However, his chilling confession, delivered in a flat monotone, sent shivers down the spines of those present in the courtroom. He described his crimes in graphic detail, sparing no detail of his gruesome acts. The trial was a harrowing ordeal for the families of Dahmer's victims, who were forced to relive the horrors inflicted upon their loved ones. Their testimonies, filled with pain, anger, and a profound sense of loss, provided a poignant counterpoint to Dahmer's detached demeanor. Despite the heinous nature of his crimes, Dahmer's defense team pursued an insanity plea, arguing that he was not in control of his actions. However, the jury ultimately rejected this defense, finding Dahmer guilty on 15 counts of murder. Section 815, Lifetime Sentencing and the Price of Evil. On February 17, 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison, a sentence that amounted to 957 years behind bars. The judge, in delivering the sentence, described Dahmer as a monster and his crimes as despicable. The sentencing brought a sense of closure, albeit a bittersweet one, to the families of Dahmer's victims. While nothing could bring back their loved ones, the sentence ensured that Dahmer would spend the rest of his days paying for his crimes. Dahmer's time in prison was marked by a strange mix of notoriety and routine. He was kept in solitary confinement for his own protection, but he became an object of fascination for both the public and his fellow inmates. In 1994, Dahmer was murdered by a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, bringing a violent end to his reign of terror. His death, while shocking, was seen by some as a form of rough justice, a fitting end for a man who had inflicted so much pain and suffering. Section 9. Legacy of a Monster, Dahmer's Enduring Impact. The legacy of Jeffrey Dahmer continues to haunt us, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of the ordinary. His crimes, so depraved and disturbing, forced us to confront the uncomfortable realities of evil and the fragility of life. Dahmer's case exposed systemic failures in law enforcement and highlighted the often overlooked vulnerabilities of marginalized communities. The fact that he was able to operate for so long, preying on young men of color, raised uncomfortable questions about race, sexuality, and the biases that can shape our perceptions. In the aftermath of Dahmer's crimes, Milwaukee underwent a period of introspection and healing. The city grappled with its newfound notoriety, striving to understand how such horrors could have occurred and to prevent them from happening again. The case also had a profound impact on the field of criminal profiling. Dahmer's crimes, with their elements of necrophilia, cannibalism, and a desire for control, challenged traditional notions of criminal behavior.